starting broadcast now then. We've got one attendee. Hello, everybody. This is Rich Peterson here hosting with you guys for the Allen Interactions webinar today. We'll be getting started in about 5 minutes for the webinar we've titled Power of Empathy. So to get started, though, for you joining us now, if you find in your control panel the chat button, and in the chat, as you open it up, you'll see all panelists. But if you take that drop down and change the all panelists to all panelists and attendees, you can share questions and comments with other attendees, and the panelists here can answer your questions, and we often get help from the attendees on answering some questions or making additional helpful comments on how to look at things. So to get started, if you would, just find the chat button and tell us where you're viewing us from today, and maybe tell us a little bit about what your fall is doing and how you're looking forward to all the beautiful weather for the next 6 months. And we'll get started here in about 5 minutes. Actually, 3 minutes.
Thanks, Rich. We have Eve joining us from Indianapolis, and Erica joining us from New York, and David from Nashville. It's so fun to see all the states. I've always thought we should have a big map and put pins in them when that state's represented. So CJ from South Mississippi, and it's hot. Oh boy, I bet. Carol from Tacoma. Wow, this is awesome. Rena, Seattle, Texas, Louisiana, New York, Virginia, Connecticut, beautiful. I just ordered a lot of tulip bulbs from Connecticut. Ohio, Minnesota, yay, Brainerd, all right. Texas, perfect. Thank you, everyone, for joining this. We're gonna have a record today by showing you almost 30 examples, so it's a good one to tune into. Oh, Belgium, fabulous. India, Auckland, awesome. Oh, thank you for joining us on the time zones. Perfect. Edmonton, Canada.
Speaking of time zones, I've been having discussions on whether or not we should be having these webinars at 8 in the morning or 3 in the afternoon to cover all the people that we know from Hawaii to Australia. Of course, 8 in the morning is a little early for Hawaii, but it's a little easier for people in Australia. So
that'll take the 8 a.m. ones. I'll take the 3 in the afternoon.
Yeah, that's one way of doing it.
7 p.m. there. Wow, thank you so much for joining us at 7 p.m.
All right, I hear the big bells ringing for 12 noon, so we'll be getting started here. Thank you all for joining us today. Our Allen Interactions webinar at Power of Empathy. Glad that everybody's been joined. We should have a big crowd, and we have lots of information to give to you today, and it'll be rapid fire, so pay attention, make comments, and move from there. So all those people who have joined us on the hour, if you'd look for the chat button or icon on your toolbar, you'll find that, and if you open that up, you'll see an all panelist drop down. If you drop that down and make it all panelists and attendees, that way you can ask questions of the panelists and anybody else who might be able to chime in on what could be a good answer and other comments as we go ahead. So today's webinar is going to be led by Lisa Stortz and Scott Kohlauer. Scott is one of our senior solutions architects, and Lisa is a strategic solutions architect. As we this webinar was originally done by Lisa back about a year ago, and her title was Not Woo Woo, Wow, They Get Me, The Power of Empathy and Learning-Centric Design Thinking. So with that, Lisa and Scott, take it away.
Hey, thanks so much, Rich. We appreciate it. So hopefully when you registered, everybody got an empathy map, this empathy canvas. If you didn't, Rich will post it in the chat window. Hopefully you had a chance to complete that and really think about what your learners are thinking and feeling. And we'd love you to start putting those in the chat window. Anything you feel that your learners are thinking and feeling. Of course, the best way to always approach this is to ask your learners rather than assume. So Scott, why don't we go to the next slide? What we think they're probably not saying. Oh, Scott, you want to touch a little bit on this before we move on?
Yeah. This is a design framework philosophy that we use, and you'll see this applied in many of the examples, but it's called CCAF. You can find more information on our website, but it's called Context, Challenge, Activity, and Feedback. And these are many of the components that learning should have to really connect and create learning that will help those learners connect and have empathy for what they're going through as an online learner. So we'll be talking and discussing some of these components as we go through.
Perfect. And as I mentioned, we're going to show almost 30 examples of great things you can incorporate. So let's get started. Go to the chat window. Let us know how many of you would voluntarily take your own training unabashedly, that you love it and think it's the best stuff ever and you would love to take your own training. Let me know. You betcha. Absolutely. Awesome. Yes. Perfect. You guys must be doing some great work. That's fabulous. Depends, of course, most of it. Good. Oh boy, we must have some great designers on, because it looks like a large majority of you would take your own training. That is great. Often we hear from learners, they may not be as enthusiastic about training. And so that's where the empathy map really comes in handy. If you really can unveil and ask them, how are they feeling about the training? What are they thinking? What we don't think we want to be hearing, Scott, if you go to the next one, we're probably not hearing that the text next button is so engaging and highly interactive, right? Text next button is not highly interactive. Answering multiple choice ABC questions is exactly the work I do every day. We, as Scott will often say, everything we do is a multiple choice question, but framing it in ABC is probably not as relevant in their work day to day that they really do. So we probably are not hearing that from our learners. We're probably not hearing that they're so glad the narrator is reading to them word for word what's on the screen. We often hear the opposite. And we're probably not hearing, I'm so excited to take the exact compliance training as we did last year. A lot of boredom factor with that. And not as often as we need to be hearing is this training is so fun. But it sounds like you guys are doing a lot of great work too. So please share it in the chat window as well. We'd love to learn from you during the course of this. What we tend to hear most from our learners, so let's go to the chat window. Let us know, Scott, if you can back up one, what you think your learners might be thinking and saying. It sounds like you would voluntarily take your training, but as you really worked through the empathy canvas and thought about what your learners are thinking or feeling, what are some of those, right? What do they think it's relevant? Is it the right length? Is it too hard, too simple? So just go to the chat window and let us know what you uncovered. Transition periods, so they're mostly bored, it's too much reading. How does this help me in my daily life? Scenarios aren't realistic. I think I already know this. It's not another one. This is corny. Annual training needs to be changed up. Where do I find it? Too much reading. Perfect. Those are all great. Keep them going in the chat window. We love that. We love to learn from that. And when we do the follow-up to this too, we'll include these. Earl with the snoozers. Okay, great. Exactly what we're going to tackle today. If you're hearing from your learners, I don't have time for this, it's not relevant to me, I'm bored, I can just click through it. Shoot, I can't move forward yet. When do I get to what I want? It's just more corporate speak. The longest answer must be right, because who would bother to take the time to make it, to write it that long if it wasn't? ARG, this is the same as last year. It's too hard, it's too easy, it isn't fun. So if you're hearing that from your learners, you're gonna get a lot of tips and tricks today. Some are gonna be a little more simple and some a little more complex and take a little longer to incorporate into your designs. But we're gonna be showing examples of how to overcome all of these. So let's get started with kind of a before and after quick example. that really emphasizes when we took the time to do the empathy mapping, what the end result was for the course. So Scott, want to take it away?
Very good, Lisa. Thank you. Yeah, so this is a before and after. One was not gone through kind of the empathy mapping and thought, and the other one was. This was for bank tellers who needed to learn about components of a check that made it negotiable. If they took a check that was non-negotiable, gave money for it, it would be a big problem for the bank, for that teller. In the original one, the designer gave just a lot of information that wasn't relevant to that particular task as a teller. And so the learners were going through and clicking on a lot of information. They were getting components of a check, but many of these weren't relevant. They went through a post test and they got some things right. But when they found, they looked at the statistics, they weren't seeing the decrease in those non-negotiable checks being taken by tellers. And so we went through an empathy map and really learned about, what are the things that you need and you think you need to learn to do this. And some of the things they said was we need practice, we need just the basic information, we don't need all this other SME information that oftentimes people pile on a new learner. And so this was that previous one was transformed into this. And so we also talked about some mnemonics and thought process about how do you look at a check. You always start with the date and then you go to the amount. If you go out of order, the system says, no, we want you to think about these things in order. And the learners then will select and explore these. And then as we go through, we're going to come up with a secondary question that says, okay, based on what you just learned, can you think of the first thing that you need to look at? And so if the learner was paying attention, they'll actually click in order on these checks, just as they would in their daily task. If they didn't, they could always go back, learn it, and come back through. So this was, taking 20 minutes to get to this point in the first course. It was about 5 minutes to get through this in this course. So we're actually empathetic about the time that it's taken. We're relevant about the information. And then we again went into the practice. They said we didn't get enough practice. We were told what to do, but we didn't get to think about and become an active learner. And so here what we're doing is presenting checks that they can look at, they can flip over. If you look at the dates, all these dates are based on the current computer date. So this was done a number of years ago, but it's relevant today. And the basic question is this negotiable, yes or no? And if you say, no, it's a 50-50 guess, we're going to say, okay, that's right, but tell us why it's no. And so they have to, again, actively think about, was it a good guess, or did they know that there was no bank on this particular check? And then they would move on to another one, and they would do a number of practice elements. So we use that empathy map to think about what they needed, what they were experiencing, what practice they wanted to become a better teller and not take these negotiable checks.
Perfect.
So
that's a great
quick
example, Scott.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great before and after. When you are using your empathy map, how much better you can make your designs. How about overcoming, I don't have time for this, right? How can we make it more, give them permission?
Yeah, so this was a course we did for IBM, and they started putting these little intros in all their learning, because they said if we're going to spend time and effort to create them, we want the learners to know that they're important. And so at the beginning of the course, we're going to just walk through this. So we asked the learner to set aside time, whatever time it would take to, estimate the course. They would, say yes. We want you to do this without interruption, so go ahead and forward your calls. Sometimes they gave them actual signs to put on their doors or their cubes and say, I'm in training. Please don't interrupt me. So this little bit of information at the beginning just allowed them to say, okay, my company is actually endorsing that I'm taking time to do the training and giving you permission to think about and use that time as a learning experience. So
I think that's especially critical, especially, with people working from home more now too. So you might have to say, hey, kind of, grab your pet, have them sit on your lap, take your course, and off you go. How about if you're hearing this isn't relevant to me? How can we make it more roles based? Do you have some examples of that?
yeah, so oftentimes, we do training, and the training is generic, and we want everybody to take it. But wherever you can, if you give them some options to think about that this training is actually for me and for who I am. This one was done for HSBC. They train all over the world. So here you get to select what part of the world you're from. You can select, different countries and select the different languages that are associated with those countries. We're going to just pick English because it's we can read it. And then there's a number of job categories in your role, and you select this, and the system is going to help you identify and present content that's relevant to your role. These don't mean much to me except for COO, but they do in the HSBC world. And then it gives you a check to say, okay, you want this in English, your country is Hong Kong, and this is your role, and you can either reset or confirm. So doing that, I think, is really important. Here's one for Autodesk. This was actually done for some data security components. And again, giving them some different roles. These are a little more broader roles, but it still gets them thinking and engaged in that this content's for me, and I'm not just being spoon-fed generic content for everybody's consumption. So I think that's being empathetic to the learner around, that it is specific to their needs.
Perfect, thanks. And Eve has posted something great in the chat window. And again, we encourage all of the participants to engage with each other in the chat window too. We all, everyone has a lot of good ideas, so we love to learn from everyone. But Eve noted that I'm interested in time empathy and prioritizing succinct as it relates to the new generation of learners that can create, absorb, share learning with curiosity and engagement on YouTube in 15 seconds or less, TikTok type examples. We'll show a few of those throughout this, Eve, but we're also happy to hop online separately and show you more. And if other participants have ideas for Eve, please put it in the chat window. So
yeah,
Scott,
that's
go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that's a really good point that you're hearing micro learning, you're hearing small bits, small components, small pieces, and those are great, and wherever you can do it, it's wonderful, and it just has to fit the content, right? It has to fit what they need to learn. Do they need practice? If we can just tell them how to do it and they can go do it, that's great. So you just have to know the content, know what the expectations are and the goals are for that learning, and decide what type of delivery platform is going to work for you and that learning.
Yeah, I think that brings up a good point. If 15 seconds is great if you can apply it directly after, right? If I need to fix something in my home, I'll YouTube it, and as long as I'm going to do it right after. But if there's a delay, in your sequencing, then you may have to kind of draw that out. And also, as Scott mentioned, just more of the content of it. So we will be showing some examples of that. Meantime, let's move on. What if they're bored? How can we surprise and delight our learners?
Yeah, they're bored, or the content isn't quite connecting with them at the right time or at that moment. This one was done for Pulte Group. It was an onboarding, and one of the things we did in our empathy mapping was ask those learners, what are the things when you start an onboarding? What are the things you're thinking about, and what are the questions you have right out of the gate? And so. Well, there was some additional information. We've got a host here. We told them, hey, if you've got some things that we're not addressing, you can go and click the Ask Kate button, and we'll jump up to this FAQ. And the first thing is, when will I receive my first paycheck? That was one of the biggest questions that people had on on an onboarding. You know, how often do I get paid? Will I have my direct deposit take effect? And so what we did was, again, give them that option to, if the content isn't resonating right out of the gate, we can have them go here, ask some of these really, really pressing questions, and then jump back into the content, and they'll have had those. They're not thinking about those elements. So just another way to do it. This one was done for.
And Scott, are you telling me, Pulte, they didn't want to know the whole history of the company and listen to the talking CEO head more than they want to know about their paycheck?
Yeah, well, that's that's one of those things that you have to decide, is that really relevant, and how do you create an experience that they are interested in, and they're not bored with looking at 10 minutes of the history of the organization. That might be a good spot for a quick YouTube video or a TikTok video or something like that, that's fun and interesting and really jazzy, and it's got some energy. So here, this next one is for Caribou and Einstein Bagels. Again, these are short little examples. You can use them for practice. You can actually use them in on the tablets within the organizations. But it's practicing these different drinks that you need to make. And one of the things we found out was that they didn't get a lot of practice doing it. They were being yelled at by customers for not doing it. So we took the top drinks that the new people are making and actually gave them this ability to start to think about, okay, what are the ingredients in this cappuccino? You can select the different ingredients. If you get something wrong, you can unselect it, submit it. We're on a timer because things need to go a little quickly. And then once you get the different items, you can actually go through and you can select a process. In this one, you actually can move things up and think about the process, delete things that aren't appropriate, and we'll submit that. And here we see a summary of how we did and what we did and what we didn't do right. So again, making it active, making it fun, these quick little hits on how to think about and make that recipe more sticky for that learner in a fun and gaming like environment.
Yeah, I think that really speaks to authentic learning experiences and meeting the learner where they're at, right? Because we could level up, only have them do 3 drinks, then have them do more and level them up. Go to the chat window, please, and share with us and the other participants of how you surprise and delight your learners. What are some cool things? Is it in your language? Is it in your media? Is it that you make things shorter? How do you surprise and delight your learners? Meantime, Scott, what about, I can just click through this. How do we make it more active versus passive?
Sure. Here's a couple of examples where we've passive learning is we're just telling you, we're asking you to read, we're not making you think and do and create that memory of process. This was done for Nexstar, and they're teaching kids out of college or out of high school on how to do maintenance and understanding maintenance in the world of the trades. And this was one activity that we did where they have to learn about using these detectors when they're going out and trying to detect leaks in cooling systems or gas systems. And so instead of just telling them, this is what you do, we created this experience where they actually had to use the detector and go through and see if they can identify potential leaks that they would click on. And so again, this is getting into that world of practice, of seeing if they can find something by going through the whole system and identifying these leaks. And when they're done, we'll say we're done testing, and we'll get some information if we were able to find out what that particular component was. So it again is anytime we can make that active learning where they're doing something, that helps them connect and have more fun and not just be a passive participant in the learning. This next one was for Manhattan and Associates. They were training workers on dock and loading activities. And again, we could tell them how to do it, but in this experience, we've got a timer. We're having them try to do this as quickly as possible. They get these random pallets, and they've got to go through their papers and look up the different components and try find it. Okay, so I found this one here, and that goes to door C, and now they're loading it, and they come back, and we've got to load up these warehouses. So again, it's taking them and giving them some practice and thinking about the way to apply it really helps them, connect and become a better performing employee, which is really important. And that's why we do this empathy mapping, is that we want those learners to connect with the content so they are performing these tasks and understanding how to do it better to make the organization better.
Perfect. Thanks so much. And I should mention the Empathy Canvas was originally done by David Gray, and you can find it also in the book Game Storming, which we highly recommend. Scott, we're getting a lot of questions on how we're building these and what tools. I made it clear we're tool agnostic because we go with whatever our clients need in their environment, but that we're about a 40% storyline shop, 50% HTML5, and 10% other. Also got really good ideas going from everything from mascots to testing out, which we'll talk about later too, timed interactions, different things to surprise and delight. So lots of great ideas. I always get goosebumps because we get so much good information from the participants. So thank you so much for sharing that. Scott, what if we're hitting that, the more, that was great on I'm bored and surprise, delight, and, passive versus, active versus passive. What about, when am I going to get to what I need? How do we motivate the learners to let them know what's in it for them?
Yeah, so I think that, this area is huge, because if you have a motivated learner, they're going to pay attention and they're going to connect with the material at a much greater level than somebody who's like, yeah, this isn't really connecting with me. So, trying to build in those, we're going to show a motivational movie intro to help them connect. This one is an activity. This is on email efficiency. So this is a course on helping you understand how you can not send as many emails and not receive as many emails. And what we're going to be doing is just going through a little exercise that says, how many emails do you send in a day? Lisa, what do you think? How many do you send in?
How many do I send in a day? Yeah. Well, for those of you on the line probably know I send about 5,000, but let's go with about 150.
Okay, 150 emails a day. You're busy. And how many do you receive a day?
About the same.
Okay.
I don't think that's unheard of. Do you? I mean, that's
well, there's a lot that goes into junk that you don't need to deal with. But so anyway, the learners can put in some numbers that they can guess, and what we're trying to do is, again, unveil some of the. So based on 300 emails a day, that adds up to 73,000 emails a year, which is quite a bit. And then we look at that and we bring back some metrics and say, assuming you spend 2 minutes on every email, that's 153 work days that you've spent parsing through email. And so if you look at our tool and some of the simple ways to curb email usage and being more efficient and having better etiquette, you can assume a 20% savings, which would be 31 days a year in email reading and processing you don't have to work through. So this is just an example of how you can help that learner understand why this content is important, why you should pay attention, and how it can help them as a what's in it for me type of experience.
Well, and it makes it personal, right? Because it's I know, oh my gosh, I can't believe it feels like I get too many emails, but now I can see that, and then I'm motivated to take the course and see how I can make it better. Kaylee has a good question. How do you gauge a client's appetite for games and creative fun contexts, like the movie trailer opening you mentioned? Some audience or subject matters don't align to this approach.
Yeah, I mean, it has to be the right content. We have we have what's called a savvy start when we start projects, that we have in-depth conversations with our stakeholders, with the subject matter experts, and really talk about what they're trying to get out of the content, and then come up with, you know, these ideas, and based on their feedback, we'll have to modify and change designs to meet their expectations, their corporate goals and corporate philosophies. But you know, we show a lot of examples in those meetings. We show examples of how we've done it for other organizations, and a lot of times our stakeholders and subject matter experts don't see a lot of higher end or more engaging learning, so they don't even know that it exists. They just know that what they've taken or what they've, you know, experienced. And so by showing examples, we can get them thinking about and maybe moving the meter on their appetite for doing these types of things.
I think we've come a long way too, right? Games and creative fun used to be like, whoa, we're not going to spend corporate money on that. But, you know, we've all seen our kids just immerse in it and how much they've gained. So I think it's awesome that, you know, corporations are accepting it now and we can show the results. I think as much as you can make it contextual games is so much better because it makes it relevant. It's sometimes hard to connect to a Jeopardy game versus, hey, I need to, you know, load boxes in a warehouse and I'm going to gamify my actual job. So I think there's ways to do that. And Scott, Renee thinks your volume sounds like it's in a well.
Oh, really? Oh.
Yeah, I'm not hearing that as much, but if others are, please let us know in the chat window. How about another example of what's in it for me? How can we, like, if a learner's just not like, oh, you know, I know how to do it, I'm just not doing it because nobody else is doing it.
So this video is more of a motivational video. This was done for United on helping flight attendants understand the importance of looking at slide pressure tests every time they get on a plane. And this was the beginning of that course. So this is an extreme example, but it was important. Oftentimes, when we create learning, we don't show them, if they do it wrong, what are the consequences of not doing it properly. And this is obviously extreme, but it can be applied in many different areas of learning. Is, you know, showing them the catastrophic or the bad things that happen when you don't do it right can help them, again, think about why it's important and motivate them to connect with the content. So, you know, don't be afraid to you know, show the wrong way as well as the right way, to contrast the two results for an organization or themselves in many cases.
Yeah, and Jason had a good comment in the chat window. Well, that was terrifying, which it actually was terrifying. But when we went in and empathy mapped the flight attendants, they knew to do the safety checks. We just found out that the ones that were younger flying or less seasoned didn't want to carry around the giant manuals to do it. And all the seasoned flight attendants knew to go through the checklist. So they just needed to be motivated because they just didn't feel like it could happen at all to them, that nothing could happen of danger to them. We followed this with a lot of statistics about how many fires are on planes and different things like that. Now, interestingly enough, this was done more than 10 years before Sully landed the plane in the Hudson, which is interesting because that's exactly what we were replicating here, you know, that could potentially happen. And interestingly enough, I was doing this presentation at Training 2020 last year when the co-pilot with Sully was the keynote too, and we had shared this demo. So Very interesting. Someone else, Michelle brought in a good comment. We can shock our learners. It creates an emotional response, which makes the learning more sticky. Absolutely. We love diving in and saying, hey, great, what does it look like when they're doing it right? It's easy to take them down the right path, but it's kind of yawn or boring. So what does it look like when they're doing it wrong? And if we can take it all the way to the extreme, we do a lot of terrorism training, so it's easy to take it to the extreme with that. What's the worst case? But you can do it with anything. If it's cybersecurity, right? How do you keep your company out of the headlines? Anything you can do to shock and awe them to make it sticky, absolutely. And Debbie commented, better to show them and allow them to make a mistake in training than real life. No question. Perfect.
The next area is learner control, and we talk a lot about having those learners connect with the content and be able to make their own decisions. And we showed that with the Ask Kate and the onboarding, where they could jump up and get information, at different points in time. This is a technique we used for a lot in designs. Is we create activities, but most of the time in designs, we give them a bunch of information, and then we say, okay, now let's apply it to a situation. And that information that we give them up front doesn't have a context or a relevance for them to understand why it's important, why should I pay attention to it. In this particular course, this one's for Coca-Cola Industries. This was on reviewing this is for managers that are reviewing different components of a potential employee. And down on the bottom, you can see we've got two different things. We can say begin this activity, because we're going to actually put them through a review of a resume against some characteristics, or tell me more information. So this just, again, gives them a choice to say, hey, you know what, I think I can do this. I've done this before. And maybe they can. But if they're going through that activity and they can't, we'll always jump them out and say, hey, you might want to learn a little bit more about this, or tell me more about it. This very simple design allows that learner to opt into additional information. So they're asking for it, which will give them a whole different mindset of when they're reading it, when they're thinking about it, because they've asked for it. It's just a whole different way of accepting information. It's like when you, Lisa mentioned, when you got something broken at your house and you YouTube it and you're watching it because you have to fix it because somebody needs it fixed, you're going to pay a lot of attention. So if you ask for it, you'll pay attention. If you're just forced to go through it, it might not connect at that level. So we can either go into the activity or tell more. And if we go into the activity, we're going to give them
Hey,
some
Scott, hold on that one concept too. The other advantage of putting that tell me more in, because it gets the SMEs off our back as well, right? All those binders they walk into the room with, their huge stack or a wagon full of all that super important content. We can put that all in the tell me more. We know in user testing about 83% of the learners don't go there. They want to just try it first, but it is the helpful way to appease your SMEs. We also then make sure that in the feedback, as we talked earlier about CCAF, right, put them in a meaningful context, give them a challenge because they're adult learners, give them activities to keep them interested. And then the feedback is where the critical SME information comes in, the subject matter experts, because that's when the learners really, they've made the choice, they've made the mistake, and then we tee up the feedback. But if you have a lot you need to put in, that's a good trick to put it in up front that way.
Yeah, and another component of feedback, and this is a good example of it, this is looking at job requirements, looking at applicant data, and what you're trying to do is identify some additional information you should talk about in the in-person interview or Zoom interview, if you will. Here's one in the other: driving record accident-free for 3 straight months. Okay, so you might want to dive into that a little bit more. They were a driver for Pepsi at one time, and Typically what happens in learning is that if they get those 2 check marks and those are the correct ones and you say submit, you'd say, yep, that's correct. But what happens if you get it wrong? Nope, that's not correct. So what we've done here is we've actually given a feedback for each one of these items and allowed you to go through and see if you got them correct or incorrect, and given them a little bit of more information around why it's important to think about this. And so having that extra bit of feedback, a lot of learning comes in that feedback component. So
perfect. Thanks, Scott.
Yep.
And we're going to have to pick up the pace a little bit here. So how about if we do the rewrite history and then move on to the next chunk?
Okay. Actually, I think
you can go right to corporate speak. No worries.
Yeah.
We do have a really fun interaction on rewrite history. If you're interested in it, it kind of goes to that shock and awe with the headlines and then back into that you can reconstruct. So if you'd like to see that, just reach out. We should mention that learning never stops. So reach out to any of us anytime. You can reach out to me directly and I'll get you hooked up with our colleagues as well. We love sharing this stuff. Hopefully that that comes across. So if we're hearing from our learners and our empathy mapping, this is just more corporate speak, yada, yada, yada. How can we use humor, sassy, new voice?
So this is
Today, we're setting the course for the future of travel and lifestyle services. And it all comes down to 2 words: extraordinary care. This is more than just a program. It's a culture and a global servicing philosophy. And it all starts with you. That's why we want you to help establish our extraordinary direction from the beginning, building upon and enhancing the servicing model that you've always used. So, what would you like to know?
So in this one, this is got you'll see when I make a selection of where you want to go, when it's about sassy or it's about, the voice, the humor, the enthusiasm, those narrators can actually have a big part in how people connect and get excited about it. But in this case, we started out this course and it's about this extraordinary care process that this company is going through. And we're like, so where do you think you want to go? Do you want to go, what is this extraordinary care? How will it enhance my daily customer interactions, or what's in it for me? So again, this goes back to that ability to give the learner control. And what's interesting is people always say, well, what if they don't pick this? I want them to know that. And it's designed so you're going to pick everything that we have to offer. We're just making it feel like you have learner control. And so we're going to go in what's in it for me.
Whoa, you don't mess around. I like that. The path to extraordinary care is a journey of learning and self-improvement. So
you can kind of see that again, it allows them to pick their path, get information. There's some fun, you don't mess around. That's great. Let's go right into it. Is ways to, again, make them feel like it's not just your basic, corporate training, and it's fun and interesting. So.
And I love the group on all the participants today love humor as well and love to use it. It's so funny how many corporations will say, no, we don't like humor here. It's like, I kind of think your learners might though. So.
Yeah. And this one is using video, and again, video is great. Anytime you can make video a little more active, going back to active versus passive, video is typically passive. You watch it, and if you turn away at the most important piece of information, you won't get it back unless you go through it again. So we're asking the learners to think about watching the video, because we're going to be asking questions, stopping, going in different directions. And this was something we did along those lines.
You're a new member of the marketing team. You're on your way to the office to meet your new team for the first time. Charla, the team manager, has you on her calendar. Let's see if you can make the right choices to help the team escape the blame game. Ready?
Walking down the sidewalk, kicking my feet as I move to the music, step to the beat. I woke up today, canceled all my plans, and I stepped right outside with my guitar.
Okay, Scott, you can stop there. I hate to laugh, but it is fun. So it's fun to see in our user testing too, how many chose to leave it versus straighten it, which is kind of fun. So humor is good. I know there's some audio issues. The videos are a little crackly. That is the last of the videos components we have to show, but I think this one is good. It's learner control and definitely uses humor. Scott, how about the longest answer must be right? Because who would bother writing the longest answer? How do we make it more authentic scenarios?
Yeah, so the authenticness of this is something that that the Hilton organization we created for them to understand how you have a number of different customers. They have all different types of characteristic needs and their brands, and they've got, what do we have here? 12 different properties that you can choose for a customer. So you get to select a customer, and again, here's some learner control. You select a customer. In this case, we're allowing them to get some information about a scenario. This dad calls up, needs to take his kids to Disney World, and you need to find a hotel that's got lots of free amenities because the tickets are crazy expensive. And so in this case, what we're doing here is asking you, you have 3 questions that you can ask this person to give you more information to help you identify the different property that you're looking at. And in this case, one of the things that we do with the longest answer is we don't give them all the different answers at the same time, so they can kind of compare and contrast and say, oh, okay, this one's a good one. We make them roll over each one of these, read about it, and make a decision whether that's the right or wrong answer. And so, that, again, that simple design where you're not showing everything at once helps in that longest answer type of scenario. And obviously good writing is important. And so as I go through this, we can select long answers, we can select short answers, and once you've selected the 3 questions, then you have to pick one of the properties. Now, another part of this design is that we use what's called leveling, where we're only going to give them 2 or 3 properties to start out with on their first choices, and then as they get more, go through these examples, they're going to be 4 and then 6, then all 12 are going to be available. So we're kind of leveling them up as they go through examples that are harder, that are more involved, and I think it's a great way, again, to make these active and make them more fun and gaming-like. Another component of this, I think that's notable, is that our feedback didn't come in us telling them. It came in the form of a review from the actual customer that you selected. So I've actually got to select the Embassy Suites, I'll say, and then we've got feedback from our customer who gave you 2 stars and told you why that wasn't the best property for them. So again, this goes back to more fun and interesting feedback, more appropriate, authentic feedback, and not always, getting great feedback based on how well you did, but this is the result of a poor recommendation. So
yeah, and someone was asking about lower cost examples too. Many of these can be actually, we've recreated some of these in PowerPoint, but we can show you some lower, investment level designs as well. And someone else had asked about product training, and this would be a good example too, that those could have easily been products that you're matching. We've done a lot of product demos too, where you use kind of a conveyor belt so they come faster to do the leveling up, which we can show you offline as well. Perfect. Okay, do you have another example for on how to make it more realistic scenarios?
yeah, absolutely. This is this is authentic. Again, what we're doing is we're training people at a restaurant. In this case, it's Denny's, on how to be a cook. And in our discussions at the beginning with the employees, we were finding things like, they didn't give us enough time to practice, understanding triaging menu items and recipes, and was getting yelled at by the wait staff because things were cold or things weren't right. And so what we did was create this experience of a simulation on cooking. And what you're going to see again is leveling. In this case, we're going to give you one grill ticket. This is all you have to do is create one order. And if you get this one right, you'll get 2 tickets and then 3 tickets and 4 tickets. And pretty soon you've got a full complement of food across the board and your plating, and you're learning that process of triaging meats and triaging foods on time. And so in this case, what we've got is this timer that we need to cook the food in. And then we've got our different menu items here, and the learner has to either, they can pause and they can go read about times to cook, or they can start to practice. So they can, decide that they want, the sausage and the eggs or the bacon first, and then maybe they throw in the toast. If you don't put the food on the correct spot, it moves it back. And the system is keeping track of when you put it on, when things are done. You're going to see things. So if I'm not paying attention, if I'm not paying attention to the toast that's done, and I'm looking over to see if the meat was done, this might be getting cold. This might be overcooked since it's hot. So I'm going to start to plate these items. And now we're waiting for our hash browns and our meat to be done. And the system is going to, give you again the ability to practice and try to create an experience where you start to learn about, hey, the meats need to go on first, and then you have to wait a few minutes and then start putting the other things on because they all get done at a different time. Once everything is
that's
plated,
about as authentic as you can get.
yeah, once everything is plated, then you get your feedback on time and quality. So you can see over here that your eggs and toast were cold, but these things came out in an acceptable amount of time. And so then you can retry it, and we'll give you another ticket with some additional menu items. So again,
And yep. Oh, Scott, we need to move on, but
Okay.
Renee's saying yummo. So with that, let's move on to this is the same exact training as I did last year. This happens a lot in compliance.
yeah, I think just being able to test out and create an experience that they at the beginning you can say, hey, you know what, I know this information, let's give them the ability to test out and move on. And that test can come in many different forms, right? It typically comes in a multiple choice question form, but it also could come in a form just like we're seeing here, in Denny's. It could be a simulation where you're actually doing these, and if you get a couple of them right, you can move on. You don't have to go through the full complement because we understand you know how to do this and you can move on. So I think that test out, that ability to not have to go through the same content if you already know it is important. All right.
Perfect. And then why don't we move on to, and were you going to show that example of the test out? No. Okay, nope, skip. Why don't we go right to the leveling up then, the Oli level up? Because we have about 10 minutes left. Not the video promo, but the, yeah, perfect.
So this one was done for, leveling up. We talked a little bit about, we saw that in Denny's, we saw it in the brand game. This one was done for railroad professionals and understanding, that, or trucking professionals, understanding that at railroads, you get there's a significant number of people who get killed every year at railroad crossings, and there's a process you need to go through. And so we're actually going to take them on an experience of practicing going through railroads and what you need to do. Here we've got 3 different trips, and each trip gets a little bit harder. The last one is the toughest railroad track with different experiences. So you pick your different truck that you're going through. And let's see here. So here we have some this is what so if you were to stop and say, well, I'm going to wait, I'm not going to be waved through when there were red lights, then you could move past that railroad crossing and continue on your drive and encounter a number of additional ones along the way. So this is when there's a catastrophic experience. This was the hardest one because you think, hey, there's somebody waving me through. I should be able to go when that's not the case. And then you can continue on, go back and retry that experience.
Another uplifting example, kind of like the airline one.
Well, we're trying to save lives, right? In these trainings, it's all about shock because they're very important to do that. This one is,
well, with the empathy mapping on that too, Scott, I think it's important to point out that, the things we uncovered from the truck drivers are one, they're very high tech in some of the trucks. They even have computers in them. Some, that are more the mom and pop shops aren't. They encounter all kinds of different railway crossings, which we didn't know. That's why we did 3 full trips. They drive different kinds of trucks. That's why we included both types of trucks. They encounter all kinds of environmental areas. So we had to incorporate all those as distractors. So that empathy mapping is really, what gets you there.
Yeah. In this example, this is a drill and practice training for vet med students on terminology in the vet med university. And there's a number of different ways that we can go through the content. You can learn about anatomy and physiology. You can fill in blanks. But the important thing here in this design was this filter, in that there are a number of things that you can go and practice. And so, meeting where they're at is, I need to go learn about the digestive system. So I can go right to that and it will give me questions about that. Or I can decide, you know what, I want to do some random questions. I want to do 10 random questions because I've got a test that covers all this. Or I want to go through all the different question types. And so, giving them options so they can self-select and practice what they need, I think is important. And this helps them do this by using this filtering system within this learning experience, this practice learning experience.
Perfect.
Right.
Thanks for that, Scott. What about, if the training, we get a lot of feedback, it's not fun. So you actually break out of the mold and you make it fun. How can you promote it? You talked about a movie trailer earlier. How can you promote it if your training really is fun and you want to make sure the word gets out?
Yeah, so this was done for that OLI, the truck driver railroad crossing. And what was fun about this is it was created with all the different experiences that we created it after the learning was complete, and just use those experiences to create this. So we'll go through this.
Why did you answer while you're driving? You know better than that.
You've completed this trip. Let's see how you scored.
So would you want to take that course? I think so, right? It would get people excited. And that was just created, literally, we used way back, we used iMovie, just took screenshots and secured the music rights and put it to music. So highly motivating. It's got really good feedback in the chat window. Michelle says, all of your examples are getting me excited to create some next level online courses with my colleagues.
Awesome, that's great.
Perfect. And we have about 4 minutes left, so I think we should go to questions. Keep the questions coming in the chat window. And Scott, you can share this example if you'd like to.
Yeah, this is just, again, using media to create that motivational moment. This was done for a Spectrum Healthcare hospitals, and it follows a patient through a journey with the hospital, but this is how it starts out. So. Whoops. I think I need to.
And that's okay, Scott, your audio was kind of crackling too.
Okay.
Yeah, so no worries. And if people want to see that, we can send that link offline. But, you know, kind of wrapping here, Scott, can you go back to the slide where we kind of, what we wanted to overcome and what we overcame?
Yep.
So hopefully you've taken away some tips and tricks today and learned a lot from your fellow participants. We really, you know, use the empathy mapping when you can. Just give it to your learners, have them, you know, be truthful about how they're feeling about the learning, you know, and overcome it, you know, build in the permission part, you know, do roles-based, even if 80 to 90% of the back end of the course is the same, have them come in different directions, then they feel it's more relevant to them. You know, you can never have enough surprise and delight or make it active versus passive. Always, you know, work on the with them for them. Give them learner control whenever you can. Use humor. Authentic learning experiences is critical. Obviously, storytelling is very powerful. And many of you mentioned that in the chat window, so thank you for that. Test out if your organization allows you to do that. Sometimes it needs to be psychometrically validated, but it's a very, very good tool, especially for compliance training. You know, if they can answer 3 out of the 6, they can test out. Meet the learner where they're at to the extent you can. You know, use leveling up, use gamification, things like that. And most importantly, keep it fun. You know, there's just too much going on in the world right now. Things are tough all around. So as much as we can surprise and delight our learners and make it fun for them is great. Scott, do you have some closing comments?
Yep. You know, again, we've got you know, lots of examples that we can share with people if they didn't see something that mapped to their particular content area, or something they didn't see that you know, mesh with them. So if they wanted to connect with you, and we can definitely go offline and show, you know, we've been at this for 27 years, so we've got thousands of demos that we can show and maybe show something more relevant. But I think these are good examples of, in general, how you can apply some of these design concepts, and we can help do that as well. So thank you.
Perfect. Yeah. So put our contact information up, Scott, if you can, would be great. And then thank you so much, everyone, for your time. Rich Peterson, thank you. You're always our beacon of hope in these technical arenas. So Rich, thank you for setting this up. Participants, thank you for being so super active in your back channel. There'll be follow-up materials coming out, including the recording. So thanks, everyone, and have a great day. We appreciate your time.